It's called double fertilization because you fertilize the egg and the central cell. The central cell already has 2 nuclei, and then the sperm adds the 3rd haploid nuclei. When the sperm fertilizes, those 3 nuclei actually fuse into 1, but it's 1 with 3 sets of DNA.
Then how can you code? I thought that like screws the whole, I don't know.
Okay, well then what is the purpose of the central cell? Okay, this is another, guys, this is another important point. The central cell becomes the endosperm. So I know this is like a ton of vocab.
What's endosperm?
Okay, so endosperm. No, I'm going to explain. Okay. So, you're making me talk over you. Sperm fertilizes the central cell. It is now a triploid, one huge cell that's triploid. That fertilization signals it to divide. It goes into this really fast division and becomes a whole bunch of cells. All those cells together are called the endosperm, but what they are is basically the food for the embryo. Okay, guys, let's remember back to our cellular respiration experiment with peas. Peas are a seed. So, what's inside that pea? The embryo, first of all, because that's the embryo to grow the new pea plant, right? And then remember how you guys were a little bit confused and we talked about it, and how peas can't photosynthesize because they don't have leaves. So then how do they get the carbohydrates to do cellular respiration that we were measuring? The endosperm, okay? That's basically the material around the embryo that's supplying the food until it has to supply enough food that it's enough energy that it can break through, it can, undergo mitosis, break through the ground, grow leaves, and then it can photosynthesize to produce its energy. So the endosperm is really critical because it's going to supply all the energy the embryo is going to need till it can photosynthesize. That's why we eat seeds. They're a good energy source because the energy was stored in there for the little embryo. So we eat the embryo as well, right? Okay, yeah. But remember, haploid is half and diploid is normal, so triploid means 3 haploid sets.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it is triploid.
All right.
Yeah. We haven't gotten to that terminology yet, so some people remember from Bio 1. Okay, so what's going to happen now, we have a fertilized egg, and we have this endosperm, and the antipodal cells and the synergids, they just disintegrate.
So what's the point of them?
We don't know the point of the antipodal cells. Remember, the synergids guide the pollen tube down. So the antipodal cells do something, but we don't know. Okay. What's going to now happen, it's no longer an embryo sac. It's an embryo. And the embryo is not a gametophyte. It's now the new sporophyte. Right? Because it's a diploid. It's going to grow into the whole new plant. Okay. How do you, now the whole thing is, here is our baby, and it has to be able to be spread. It has to go somewhere else so that it can, and we don't want it to land right here, because then it's going to compete with mommy and daddy for water and nutrients, and it doesn't need nutrients much, but like nitrogen out of the soil and stuff like that. So anyway, it wants to be spread fairly far. So that's really the job of the ovary. Besides protecting the embryo sac, it's going to become the fruit. So now you're going to have cell signaling involved, and you're going to signal the plant all the photosynthetic products now. It's going to start shipping all of them to the ovary, and the ovary is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's going to be the fruit. Okay?
What if it doesn't have fruit? Like, well, no, like flowers. Like flowers don't have fruit.
They have petals.
Yeah, they
have petals.
the flower part of it, the ovary part of the flower becomes the fruit.
But flowers. Like roses.
Like roses.
Roses do they do the same thing?
Because they don't have fruit.
Roses are just naturally attractive,
I had to ask me something, I don't know.
Because
No, now I see what you're saying. So I don't know about the little rose embryo, how that works. Now I gotta look it up.
Probably just have some weird.
Well, if you read the poems of yours,
Because there's obviously
I got some type of like nut or something.
Yeah, that's. I thought that was pretty.
Huh?
What about like? So do only these things are only the ones with fruits that we're.
There are flowers.
yeah, it's just like,
I mean, the whole purpose of the flower is to be the reproductive organs, but I do believe that there are some flowers that aren't reproductive, but I'm not sure where the
Well, because
seeds
a
are.
rose is a thorn bush, which is a
There's
lawn.
already okay.
Huh? Yeah.
an orchid.
Like balls are different.
But it's easy because it all happens.
Okay. I'll try to look that up. I don't know.
What?
Okay. Guys, let's finish. We're almost done. Okay. So we now have our embryo. We now have our endosperm. Several things are going to happen. We're going to ship all the sugars down to the ovary to make the fruit. We're also going to, this area right directly around the embryo sac is called the nutritive layer. And then this area around it, you don't need to know that. It's called the integuments. These harden up. So these little lines like right there that go around, those are going to become the seed coat. You know, like the hard part. So that's going to protect the embryo and make sure that it doesn't get exposed to anything it's not supposed to until it's ready to actually germinate. So you have the hard seed coat around it, and obviously some are harder than others. They found seeds. They dug into this like ancient Egyptian tomb, and they found seeds that they thought were like 200,000 years old, and they were able to germinate them by activating them with water. So some seeds though, like grass seeds that I buy, apparently are only good for 1 year. So I don't know, some seeds are like last longer than others, and I don't know why. Yeah.
Did it say what plants they became? Like the seeds that
It was lotus plants. Oh. So apparently their seeds are really resistant. There's some weird things with mammals too. Bats can, the female bat can store male bat sperm for like a year.
Where?
And then have it fertilize the egg. All kinds of weird things in nature.
What were you saying that like when it gets, when the outside cell, when the central cell, it goes through the haploid and it becomes like the nutrient for the embryo.
It's triploid.
Yes, triploid. What you said, it goes from going to gametophyte to a gametophyte to a what?
Sporophyte. So I mean, as soon as it's diploid, it's now the embryo of the sporophyte. The only thing the gametophyte is the pollen grain in the embryo sac. Yeah.
So that if that's the seed, right?
It will become the seed.
That will become the seed.
Yeah.
Where does the rest of it come from?
The ovary.
No. Like if we're talking about an apple, then the seed comes from that. So where does that? The seed comes from that fertilized embryo,
Right.
endosperm,
Which is stored in the ovary.
in the ovary, right?
So the apple part is the ovary.
The apple, the whole like fruit.
When you eat fruit, you're eating the plant's ovary. Yes.
Not for that reason, but I do love fruit.
And then obviously there's a lot of permutations with like the specifics because plants look very, very different. But yes, basically the fruit is the ovary of the plant. Okay. So the cells swell because you keep shipping like all the carbs there. So you just keep getting bigger and bigger. Then the fruit is unripe, so you have seeds. And again, sometimes you might have multiple seeds within one fruit. Sometimes you have one seed per fruit, like a peach. So there's a lot of varieties. Then the whole idea is the seeds have to be spread. So in the case of like, a fruit, then it has to ripen. And first of all, do you guys remember, we'll try, it's been a long time. Can we tie it together? You have to know all the plant chapters for the test. So So does anybody remember what hormones cause the fruit to be formed?
Oxygen.
Yay!